Good morning, folks. We're just going to give it a little minute for a few more people to arrive in. So we'll start in the next couple of minutes. But in the meantime, if you want to send through any questions or anything that you might have, we'll be doing a Q&A session at the end. So we'll give it maybe up until 3 or 4 minutes past the hour, and then we'll go from there. For anybody that's just joined us there, we're going to give it another couple of minutes. Yeah, in the meantime, if you want to send through any questions, we'll look to start in the next 60 seconds or so. Okay, I think we'll get into it, and we'll at least get started with introductions. And as more people join as well, they'll be able to see what's happening. And we'll also have this available as a recording as well. So my name is PJ. I'm the marketing manager at SustainIQ, and I wanted to, so the purpose of today's webinar is a bit of a look at some of the trends that are going to be shaping ESG in construction into 2026 and beyond. Delighted to be joined here today by SustainIQ co-founder Liam McAvoy and Responsible Solutions founder Shauna Young. So I'll give you guys maybe an opportunity to introduce yourselves. Shauna, as our esteemed guest today, if you want to maybe tell the folks a bit about yourself.
All right, thank you, PJ. Good morning, everyone. My name's Shauna Young, as PJ just said there, and I'm the founder of Responsible Solutions. So I work across the UK and Ireland with construction companies on ESG, social value and governance, helping them kind of moving from good intentions to delivery that actually stands up to the procurement, your funders and insurers. My background is construction and commercial management, so I do focus very heavily on what actually works in practice and how ESG can affect your risks, your access to finance and implications onto your supply chain, and also being the contractor of choice or the employer of choice as well. So most of my work now sits with the intersection of procurement reform and the social value delivery, making it robust enough to survive scrutiny and not just really for you guys to win bids, but actually be able to deliver on it. Hand across to Liam.
Cheers, Shauna. Thank you. Folks, co-founder of SustainIQ. Similar to Shauna, my background is construction, working with main contractors across the UK and Ireland for 20 plus years, and mainly in the environmental space. And during my career, my issue was the fact I found it difficult to access accurate, reliable ESG sustainability related data across projects. So we wanted to create a platform that kind of simplified that and made it easy for companies, particularly contractors in construction, to easily track their performance right across projects. So SustainIQ was born out of that, and we launched back in 2018. So I think PJ will give us a little bit more information about that towards the end. But really, we're passionate about helping our customers use their ESG data to ultimately drive their business forward and use that data to help them make informed strategic decisions in the business as well. So we can get a little bit more information on that. But yeah, really looking to get into the session today and hearing a lot from Shauna around the trends that are coming up in 26 as well. So over to you, PJ.
Yep. So the purpose of today's session is to explore just that. It's, what are the trends within ESG that are going to be shaping construction into 2026, and what can businesses do to help prepare for that. So with that in mind, I think we're going to start with a very quick little poll, just to get an indication of where people are on their ESG journey. Should be popping up on your screen in just a second. Well, while that's coming up, we'll maybe get into the E part. Oh, there we go. Excellent. We'll give that a little second, and then we'll review some of those results in just a minute. So look, with all that in mind, we will start with the E portion of ESG here at the start. So, Liam, from your perspective, what are some of the big environmental trends that are going to be shaping construction and that organizations need to be paying attention to going into 2026?
Okay, PJ. So I think, folks, we've 45 minutes here, so we don't have a huge amount of time to dive too deeply. So I'll throw out a few trends. I want to focus in maybe just a little bit more on one. I think one trend that we're definitely seeing a shift towards is the whole carbon reduction piece, and we're moving away from target and we're moving more towards delivery. And that's definitely becoming a priority. We're seeing that drove by clients in contracts. We're seeing it in planning as well. So a lot of things coming into play that's kind of pushing that up the agenda. And we would say, as a result of that, certainly particular departments like planning, like procurement, like design, all being impacted by that shift towards delivery as well. So we can get into that a little deeper maybe another time. I think another trend we're seeing is definitely the uptake of digital tools to help organizations capture data, track data, analyze, benchmark, and ultimately report on their performance using metrics against specific frameworks. Definitely seeing an upward trend on that. Obviously, Sustain IQ is one of those digital solutions available. But I think there's a realization now that this is too big and this cannot be done on a spreadsheet. So a digital solution is definitely needed. I think another trend to keep an eye out for this year is circular economy. It's always been there. It's been around for a long time, but I think we're starting to see real momentum there, and in particular around low carbon materials and alternatives starting to come now more and more into mainstream. That's kind of linked to my first point around that shift towards delivery, and again, design teams, procurement teams, all being impacted by that as those products and materials sort of come more into play as well. I think the nature and biodiversity certainly is being prioritised. 10% net gain. BNG obviously mandatory in England, and this year we're going to see it mandatory on all big national infrastructure projects as well. So I think definitely the whole biodiversity piece is a big trend and has the potential to impact as much as carbon. We're just not hearing about it. There's just not as much noise about it, but it's one just to keep an eye out for. Look, I think there's quite a few there. I think though the one I want to really flag here this morning is greenhouse gas emissions, scope 3 across the supply chain. A bit of a rollover from 25, but we are definitely seeing, with regard to our customer base, a continued trend to focus in on scope 3 across the supply chain. I think there was a huge focus in 25 on this as well, but I think in 25 there was a focus on maybe getting a real understanding around what it is, what is the expectations. Certainly, in terms of getting and prepping, I suppose, the supply chain in a lot of ways. But I think now moving into 26, while that trend continues, there's going to be just an increased focus around the actual reporting piece. And I think that continued focus is for a lot of reasons. I think there's still a big lack of understanding and awareness. This is the start of what is a very, very long journey with the supply chain on scope 3. It is a big chunk of most of our businesses' carbon footprint. So it is a big part to play, but still a lack of understanding, still a lack of awareness in terms of what is actually required. I think what we've realized is there's been a real sort of, I suppose, poor processes, lack of kind of robust procedures in place to kind of help businesses do this. And I think that's resulted in inconsistent data. I think some of the data maybe, it's not of a great quality. I think though that it's fine to an extent because really last year the focus was getting up and going, getting the workflows in place, getting the data starting to come through. And I think now the focus has to be on improving the quality of that. But there is still a quality issue and a consistency issue and getting access to it and visibility of it is still an issue. And I think as well, different frameworks and operation causing a little bit of confusion there too. But it is the biggest chunk of the footprint, and I think it's it's going to be an important focus during 26. We did see during 25 a big uptake in education, carbon literacy. So there is a lot more understanding, particularly from the supply chain in terms of what is required. How often it needs to be reported, how it is to be reported, all of that. So I think we've started to see a little bit more momentum around that. Certainly top tier, and we're seeing a lot more embodied carbon, sort of environmental product declarations coming through, EPDs from the manufacturers, from the suppliers, which is really helping with that embodied carbon piece as well. So I think that trend is going to continue, but I think there's going to be an increased focus on the reporting, an increased focus on robust procedures, and increasing the consistency of the data, the quality, the accuracy, the reliability of it, so that we're able to sort of properly stand over it and use it as well. So that would be my big. And again, based on customer feedback and areas of focus for them, I think that's a big trend just to watch out for in 26. If you're in the main contractor piece, obviously your responsibility to get those processes in place. If you're on today and you're within that supply chain, just to be fully aware and to expect those queries, those questions starting to come in, maybe from main contractors, from customers, for example, as well, just to be aware and maybe try to get ahead of that a little bit. Get the data pulled together, have it there, have it ready, so that when you're asked for it, you can easily get it out the door and off your desk and over to whoever it needs to go to. PJ, just one last thing. I know I'm rambling on a little bit. Just in terms of trends and more maybe from a legislative perspective, just a few things for everyone just to keep their eye out for this year. Certainly SRS, the Sustainability Reporting Standard, still working its way through. Across the EU, we had CSRD, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Standard, launched. There's been a little bit of a pullback on that, but still a lot of businesses within scope, still a lot of businesses having to report. So we've seen the impact of that across the EU. And so we're watching closely SRS kind of work its way through as well. And again, just for companies to be aware of that. CBAM, another one, the Carbon Border Adjustment mechanism. So coming into play, I think it's more 27, but potentially having a big impact on construction. And again, it's just to be aware of it, understand what it is and what that potential impact might be to your business. I mentioned BNG, the biodiversity net gain, again, coming in. It's obviously mandatory in England already, but 26 is going to see that rolled out across big national significant infrastructure projects as well. So potentially having an impact there too. So don't want to go too deep on all of that. We'll maybe do a session later on around legislative requirements, but certainly just to flag a few of those, keep them on your radar, kind of familiarize yourself with them and understand what the potential impact might be on your businesses. Back to you, PJ.
I think if we give you free rein, Liam, you would happily do a full webinar on each of those topics.
You could very easily.
So look, to jump over to Shauna. Shauna, you're an expert in all things social value. So I think we'll jump over to the S component of ESG, and I suppose a very similar question to the one that I asked Liam, but what do you view to be the biggest sort of trends in social value and social sustainability?
Oh, you're too kind, PJ, for them words. I suppose kind of to start off, the S of ESG and social value are very similar, and they do overlap, but they do serve different masters. So they do. So if you think of it this way, that social value is how the S, the G, and some of the E, environmental, show up in tenders and delivery within construction. On today's context, I'm discussing it in terms of social value in procurement. And again, there's different understandings of that as well. So the majority of trends that we'll see in 2026 and beyond will really be derived from compliance and the requirements from the Procurement Act and the subsequent guidance, public procurement notifications, notes, and their regional variations. Now, there's a lot of kind of scrutiny over accountability, transparency, that have been discussed in numerous webinars, I'm sure, before that you have all been on, but one of the ones I want to actually highlight is, and I see it as a positive for contractors, and that's been the acceleration of social value maturity required from the contracting authority or the public sector client that you'll be engaging with. So social value is really shifting away decisively from that box ticking exercise used to win tenders where, responsibility sat mostly with the contractor to create this additional social, economic or environmental value on appointment or through their tender submission. Contracting authorities now have a clear responsibility and a requirement to embed social value from the outset. So before the project brief is even finalised, it actually should be identified during their pipeline of opportunities, and to ensure it's aligned with their own organisational priorities or department priorities, their place-based local outcomes and their policy commitments to central government as well at that stage. So hopefully you will start to notice, and frankly I see this as I've been frustrated with this for years, is that the historic tensions around social value delivery and what is perceived as actual value for money will hopefully mitigate and kind of level out now, because they were symptoms of poor early strategic thinking from the outset. So this would have looked like, from the client side and from your side as well, potentially the client specifying elements within the asset or the project tender that can't be either procured locally, or they've stated off-site manufacturing, where simultaneously they'd be mandating local apprenticeships or training outcomes for trades or activities that don't exist locally, or where there's no local training provision for the elements that have been specified. And this was a real disconnect and seen as contractor failure when you couldn't achieve your local employment or local apprenticeship numbers as well. So, but it was actually a failure of front-end planning as well. So in short, really, and I see this as real positive, social value is no longer a bolt-on at tender stage. It's now expected to be proportionate and deliverable and also auditable for that. So by the time the contractor now becomes involved, you should be able to identify social value and be able to embed it very easily into your contract delivery, because it should have been thought from the outset as well.
Shauna, sorry, I'm jumping in here with a random one. Just it's a really interesting point. I was wondering, does that reduce the contractor input in terms of their ability to, I suppose, have an input into how that's delivered?
No, it doesn't actually, because there's now a requirement for pre-market engagement. So there is, and it will be down to the contractor to attend these sessions as well. So you will start to see more notifications within PINs and kind of early for this pre-market early engagement led by the contracting authorities during the development of their business case. So my advice would be simply, if you're serious about delivering on a project or winning a tender and wanting to do it efficiently, mitigate any risk of non-compliance with contractual requirements and have meaningful additional value or social value, you need to have the right people in that room for that pre-market engagement. So this means it's your project managers, your contracts managers, people that are actually responsible for the operational commercial delivery of the project to attend. It's not the job of a bid manager to go and attend these, or a business development manager, where this is who you would actually see in these rooms at this minute in time of similar cases. And if you have a resource or an in-house social value lead or specialist bring them to the engagement sessions also, because leaving the pre-market engagement to bid teams alone or treating social value as that bolt-on, or we'll pick it up later and we'll sort it out, you'll end up with commitments that look good in paper or that will unravel on site. And again, to be seen as a contractor of choice and to be bringing that early contractor involvement, knowledge, information on the local area, you can set kind of where you can deliver the highest value or societal value for that. This also will lead on to another major trend, and that's the step change in transparency, accountability, and outcome-based impact. So historically, contractors were required to commit at tender stage and report during delivery on input-based metrics or output-based metrics. So, for example, you'd maybe committed to 20 hours of employability support. Once the activity was completed, box ticked. That was it. This is no longer sufficient. So what contracting authorities and clients and mature clients will be looking to see is evidence of these outcomes now. So not just using kind of that same example of 20 hours delivered of employability support, you will have to be able to say that you're committing to 20 hours employability support to provide 5, say, long-term unemployed, key priority group individuals. And the outcome of that was 2 of them secured contracts or employment with ourselves. 2 progressed on to positive destinations, so further education, employment, etc. And 100% of these participants said it had a positive impact on their confidence and employability skills. So it's no longer what you input, or what you gave, which was 20 hours. It was the change in the result of your intervention. So it wasn't the fact that the intervention took place, it was that there was a change or a positive impact. So it'll no longer be what you would vision now, which is this spreadsheet of activities. You will now have to prove why it matters and how that actually aligns back to the client's policy or strategic approach to supporting their local community as well. So, and this, in addition to this, there's this crackdown on purpose washing as well. So this transparency, visibility of what was not only delivered, but what was the impact. And the other area that this kind of then leads into is the consultation finished there in December, which is where the government contracting authorities were all consulted around streamlining the metrics of social value to make sure that there's not this scattergun approach of let's collect all the data, let's collect every bit of information. My previous employment, I was collecting, there was over 350 different KPIs for social value we collated. And that was because it was across 23, 24 different social value reporting frameworks. And it's got to the point where it's now ridiculous. And there's no ability to actually benchmark across that either. So there is the hope that there will be a streamlined list of KPIs or performance indicators for social value, hopefully by the end of 2026.
So I'm just going to use that as an opportunity to maybe put out our next little poll, which is taking a closer look at social value. Obviously, with the changes brought in last year around the Procurement Act, social value has taken a bit of a precedent. So I wanted to sort of get a handle on what some of the challenges that people in the audience today are encountering when it comes to social value. While everybody is answering that, I'll just share some of the results from the first one. So, for the vast majority of people on the call here today, I think there's an acknowledgement that ESG is no longer this nice to have, it is business critical. But for a big portion of you, there's either nothing has started yet, or that you're just beginning at this stage. So interesting to see how that'll evolve. I think we're going to repeat that question on our next webinar to see how that trend changes. So be sure to watch out for that. Shauna, just very briefly, while we're still on the S, I wanted to sort of maybe drill in move away from social value and focus more in on the social aspect of ESG. And what sort of trends you see specific to social emerging in 2026?
Okay. Well, so this is there's such a big massive element of the S of ESG. So there's several major trends emerging, large because the S social of ESG encompasses the majority of your people related and economic related priorities within your company as a construction company. And one of the most significant shifts is the need to comply with existing and incoming legislation, regulations, statutory guidance. In fact, there's over 50 different key policy initiatives, standards, and legislation changes on the cards for the UK built environment sector within 2026 alone. So a lot of these will dictate how we work as a business in a sector as well. The major one from the last couple of years and that will impact Northern Ireland more in the future is the Building Safety Act. So from the 27th of January there, just the Building Safety Regulator became a standalone body. There'll be the levy requirements for the projects and delivery from contractors in England, majority of them at this minute in time. But this brings this higher expectation around competency, duty holder evidence, and that whole golden thread of information. So there will be a requirement for safety, and safety is everything to do with your people and the communities you work in. So that's why it's under social as well. And the act's really for this golden thread through the entire assets life cycle. So from design, construction through to in use, the people that are in it, the refurbishment and reuse of it all. So this will fundamentally shape how your projects are planned, delivered, and also evidenced as well. So this means this is going to drive the increased and more targeted training requirements for you as a company and your supply chain. There's role-specific competence and skill needs analysis required now. There'll be robust evidence of individuals and your organizational competency and clear accountability for the delivery of the buildings that are demonstrably safe, not just at handover, but just during the use of their in use. So this competency training, safety, culture, workforce capability are no longer just operational compliance issues. They are now part of your social outcomes as well. So they will directly affect your workforce well-being, the public safety, your long-term asset performance as well, and then trust in the industry for us as an industry, but also for the clients that we work with. There is, moving away from that, you also have your Fair Work in Scotland Employment Rights Bill in England and Northern Ireland's equivalent as well. And these will fundamentally reshape expectations for social sustainability in construction. So fair work requirements within Scotland and kind of moving along with the employment bills, right, that are very similar, moving in the same direction. It's going beyond paying the real living wage, so they're cut across secure work, so your contract types, use of zero-hour contracts, bogus self-employment. There'll be a requirement for your employees and supply chain to have an effective voice. There'll be trained union access requirements, grievance mechanisms in place, and worker engagement, creating opportunities. So again, training, progression, equal access, EDI, and then fulfillment and respect. So that's your health, well-being, dignity at work. So as contractors, this means your people practices are your social sustainability as well. So if your workforce models doesn't stack up, no amount of well-being webinars or posters on our site is going to compensate for you for this. So it's not. There's also the requirement now that's actually just come into effect this month as well, is for large companies to include a summary of their payment performance, their supply chain, within their annual director's report. So this means that larger companies will need to report on average payment days that they've have, and then also the percentage of invoices paid within 30, 60, and plus over 60 days. Again, as a main contractor, this will impact, the transparency and accountability around your payment practices. So you no longer will be able to demonstrate that you've a fair payment policy alone. Your actual behavioural will now be visible and comparable to other companies across the UK as well. And as a SME, supply chain subcontractor, this will hopefully build your resilience and ensure that you're paid on time and promptly as well.
So, Shauna, I'm just a wee bit conscious of time, so I'm going to move on. But thank you for that. I want to touch very briefly on some of the results to our second little poll that we put out there, and I think it reflects a lot of the points that you had made there. That we have an equal spread of the main challenges for organizations being too many models and metrics across clients, turning commitments into deliverables against contract KPIs. And perhaps one of the biggest one is that evidence capture and audit trail, which I think brings us on very, very nicely to our last section, which is governance. So I suppose the question that I had here is in a similar sort of vein to what I've asked before, but I suppose there's two ways to look at this section. It's like from a commercial and a boardroom perspective, and then separately from the likes of a supply chain perspective. What governance trends do you see organizations in the construction sector coming up against in 2026? Liam, I'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks, PJ. It's a big topic, and again, loads of trends coming through for the G and ESG. And I think, Shauna, just listening to you there, like it just highlights time and time again. Like I think there'd still be wrongly a bit of a perception that ESG is this other new department that's popped up that's at the bottom of the hall, and they do that. That's what they do. And like just listening to you talk through there, like it's and you were specifically referring to the S, like it impacts every single part of a business, every single department. Like this just the ripple effect from this, and particularly over the last couple of years, we've seen that kind of work its way through every single part of a business. It's just coming through more and more, and I think that impacts the governance aspect from that corporate governance perspective. Again, back to having that kind of those policies, those procedures in place to kind of manage and control all of that. Loads of trends coming through, PJ. I think the responsible procurement one is a big one. We're seeing procurement teams in particular massively impacted by all of this, probably more so than any other department at the minute, if I'm honest. Particularly getting into the supply chain, all of that, none of that can be achieved without going through procurement. And I think for the last 10 years, they've been relatively shielded from all things sustainability related, but that's now completely changed. So I think procurement is a big thing, from products, from materials, supply chain management, ethical supply chains, all of that, but then also that impact on the ground through procurement as well. However, the one I think I want to just highlight today, and again, it's a shift that we're seeing across our customer base, is to the trend around, I suppose ESG in a way is moving away from disclosure, and it's moving more towards accountability. And it's an important shift because I think the focus has been on data capture and getting access to data and getting visibility of all of that, which is great. But now we're starting to look at, well, how we can use that. So I think, if we take a look at the boardroom in 2026, I don't think there'll be as many directors, for example, asking about, ESG performance, ESG metrics, because that's now kind of like a given. They just expect you to have that in place, and there's some sort of reporting taking place within or across the business. So I think actually that shift now will be more towards, do you trust it? Do you trust your data? And I think, a few years ago, companies would have had a bit of an ESG problem. It was all new. I don't think they have that problem anymore. I think the problem now is it's a data problem, and it's their ability to sort of stand over it. So I think this year we're going to see more and more directors, you know, in that boardroom, maybe each month or quarterly reviews or whatever it is, they're now going to be starting to ask more direct questions around your ESG data, your performance data. Ultimately, do you trust it? Do you trust the data that you have? You could have a lot of data sitting captured right across the business, but can you actually stand over that? Do you trust the numbers? Do you trust what it's saying? Can you stand over it when it's being scrutinized, when it's being challenged, be that in the boardroom, be that during an audit, be that by a client? Can you actually, hand on heart, stand over your performance data that you're maybe capturing right across all those different projects, and you're bringing it all together into one big central pot, for example? And I think this is a big one. This is a really important one because this is now kind of where we're at, because we've been rolling this out now for the last few years. And I think, certainly within that boardroom perspective, ESG is now on the agenda and it's being discussed at that level. And, we're bringing the business case, for example, things like carbon reduction, and all maybe requiring a level of investment. So now the question would be, can that data be used in those conversations? Can it be used to help those big strategic decisions, investment decisions being made within business? Because the answer is it should. The data should be informing those decisions. It should be informing those conversations. It should very much be part of that. So I think the focus and the trend now is moving away from disclosure, moving towards accountability, and being able to ask yourself the question: do you trust your performance data? Can you stand over it if it's being scrutinized, if it's being challenged? And more importantly, can you use it to make those big, important strategic investment decisions that every single one of us is going to have to make in the coming years? And if we're just looking at the environmental, and we're looking at the emissions piece, then we're talking around things like carbon reduction and net zero, all of which will require money being spent. So can that data that you hold be used to help inform those conversations and those decisions? And I think that'll be a shock to a lot of businesses, because I think, again, that shift, I suppose we're moving away from maybe those companies that hold the most data taking the lead, and actually it's those businesses that can stand over their data actually now taking the lead, because having that level of confidence in their performance will allow them to move at a much faster pace, make decisions much quicker. And in terms of positioning themselves in the market, it's obviously going to help them be a lot more competitive as well. So yeah, I think big trend 26 again coming through from our customer base will be a wee bit of a shift away from just disclosure and now actually towards accountability, and having that consistency, that accuracy, that reliability in the data that you're pulling across the business.
Thank you, Liam. Shauna, just before I come to you with the same question, folks, we're sort of approaching the end here, so there is a little Q&A feature there if you want to get any questions you have in. And we'll wrap up today's session with a little Q&A. But Shauna, from your perspective, what do you see as being the main sort of trend within governance?
I suppose kind of taking a look at supply chain and kind of the requirement around ethical supply chain assurance, as well as their own workforce practices and accountability. So if you look at modern slavery, forced labour, and illegal working, the increase in due diligence is getting sharper, and it will now be tied to exclusion risks through the Procurement Act as well. So again, guided very much from the Procurement Act. So in the UK, guidance on the Modern Slavery Act in section 54 was updated there just at the end of late last year, and there's a rising expectations or an increased benchmark of what good actually looks like. Now, if you take that along with and in parallel with the ACTA Economic Crime and Transaction Act, I think that stands for. So again, that's around your ethicalness of your payments, engagement with your supply chain, the due diligence of your payments, and the financial risk associated with that, and putting a strategy in place to mitigate any illegal payments, bribery, corruption, or non-payments of tariffs or taxes as well. So again, these have been explicitly noted within the Procurement Act, and strengthening the exclusion regime in relation to that as well. So you will have increased, if you have not already in place, there'll be the increased due diligence requirements and governance and insurance practices and policies in place required for illegal working and your payments as well.
Thank you, Shauna. Yeah, so we'll move into the questions. because I think there's that much stuff maybe happening within the space at the minute that there's no one session is going to cover everything that maybe organizations need to be aware of for the year ahead. But
I think PJ, you're absolutely right. There, we don't have the time to go deep in anything this morning. Really, this morning was just to flag, some of the key trends as we see it to be aware of over 26. A couple of other ones I'm just going to shout out. Shauna, feel free to do the same. Obviously, ratings is one I think. Again, more 2028 maybe, but starting to make a lot of noise there. Look, folks, AI, a lot of stuff coming through and how that's impacting ESG as a whole. But then when you break down each of the individual ES and G, there's a lot of pros, I believe, coming through from that in terms of the speed at which we get access to data, the volume of which we get access to data. And of course, there's cons. Everything comes with a disclaimer when it comes to AI. But I just think, be aware of a lot of opportunity in that this year as well. Um, Sorry, PJ,
so
wanted to get a few extra wee ones in there as well.
no, absolutely. I think AI is definitely one that I think a lot of people are going to be very conscious of. But one of the questions that we've got here from the audience is, and open to both of you to answer, how do you demonstrate the long tail ESG benefits to developers? I.e., what makes them go beyond the minimum when the benefits probably won't be there after delivery?
That's a good question. Sorry, my volume is on. So how do you basically make the business case to developers? I think first of all, there's a lot of legal drivers coming in that's gonna push it up their agenda. Again, there's again the BNG obviously, that net gain is coming in 26 for the big infrastructure civils projects. Um, and I'm trying to think of a few more there, legal drivers that are definitely coming in as well. Um, but look, I get the point. They're focused on the development, getting it out of the ground, getting it handed over. I think there's opportunities there in terms of the location and you know um I suppose the design and all of that is gonna feed into that as well. Sean, I'm probably struggling a wee bit with that. I'm
I,
gonna just grab. There's a couple of pieces of legislation I want to just flag
mm,
on, so
I
I'll
will.
grab that quickly.
Well, I suppose for kind of from my perspective, it's always about having the greater good
Yeah.
as well. So most people choose to do the right thing and beyond kind of that immediate value. And that again, that's one of the kind of areas the Procurement Act looks at. It's not just about that immediate value, but it's to or the cost, should I say, to the developer. But it's a look at the kind of actual running cost and the performance of the building in use as well. So it's looking at whole life costings or the whole life cycle cost of the development, not just the initial outlay of the price or the cost of how much it is to develop. So for me, it's taken a longer look at ESG when you're actually as part of your development from the outset and through the whole life cycle of the project as well.
A few wee things are just on that, because I was reading about it recently. I think the big one there is money as well. It depends who's funding the scheme. If there's investors in the background, if there is required, there is going to be a lot more ESG clauses built into those investor or finance or loan agreements. And
Mhm.
those ESG clauses are going to be built in there from a developer perspective as well. So that's going to massively impact that investor and finance linked sort of reporting. And I think as well, again, I mentioned the BNG coming 26, and then there's the energy efficiency and the building standards all come through more sort of 27 there as well. So I know the question was more around the business case. I think that there's a lot of kind of more regulatory stuff through planning and different thing that's coming in that's unavoidable. They can't really get around that. I think the big one there would be around the investment or the finance behind the scheme is going to be a big driver there, and planning. The two I think are big
Mhm.
big areas that's going to kind of drive that forward with the development side. We'll get a bit more information pulled together on that and out maybe tomorrow with this email. Signpost different ways for different information on that.
Another question in there is what do you envision being the impact of AI on ESG in the construction sector?
Huge, huge. So I'll jump in, Shauna, just quickly. I mean, I think like I think there's huge opportunity. I think ESG is massive, right? And we all know that. And the amount of data that's required is vast and it's growing by the day. And then when we bring in the supply chain, and even if you just take one part of ESGE, and even if you just take one part of the E emissions, it is so unbelievably complex. So I think AI has the potential to revolutionize all of it and get us access to a lot more data, huge volumes of data very, very, very quickly. So it's just going to speed up. It's going to speed up the process and it's going to increase the volume of data that we have access to as well. Certainly at Sustain IQ, we would see ourselves and now refer to ourselves as an AI enabler because we hold huge amounts of data and any of our customers that are investing in AI tools can tap into that and can start to really access that and do amazing things with that. So I think there's huge potential from that perspective and pulling data from lots of different places very, very, very quickly and providing that analysis as well. So it's a big part of our roadmap at Sustain IQ and building AI in and across the platform. Look, it's like all things, it always comes with a disclaimer. Not everything's good, not everything's positive. You know, there's yeah, you have to check the sources. Everything, a bit of sense checking still needs to be going on for sure in terms of calculations and methodologies that are being applied in the background. So I think there's huge opportunity. I think there's also huge risk. And I think it's really, really important to be aware of that risk. I don't think it necessarily would put us off, but I think we need to be aware of it, understand it, and again, make sure we build a process around that to protect the business and mitigate the business against those risks. But certainly at the minute, it's coming, it's here, and there's definite opportunities there. And for me, it's the speed and the volume of what we're going to get access to. Shauna, I don't know if you
I suppose kind of if you look at it on the ground or the micro level around even just social value for any contractors that don't have that specialist resource, AI can be used very easily to get a local needs assessment done. Where it would have taken 1 to 2 days to do that prior to this, you can get the groundwork done in 30 minutes now. So again, if you don't have a resource there, AI is going to be your catalyst to be able to develop social value and create actual social value on a site if you hadn't previously that resource. And then if you look at the wider level as well, we all know that there's the working group within central government around how they're going to use AI to evaluate tenders and then use market intelligence along with that to confirm that what you've put into your tender is actually what's been publicized by you as a company. So you will have to match these two as well. So, that it will increase transparency and accountability for you as a contractor because of the visibility of information out there now. So again, you need to be starting to think about this when you're starting to put in your tenders because they are about to start using this to evaluate tenders.
Shauna, that's fascinating. So whatever is going into tenders, using AI, the government then can very, very quickly determine whether what is in there
Yeah.
and actually is it reflective of what you're actually doing. So basically, huge potential for companies to get caught out very, very
Yeah.
quickly if they're telling tall ones in a tender. Incredible, unbelievable. That completely changes, I think, um, you know, our approach to all of that as well. So the messaging has to absolutely reflect the actual performance.
Yeah.
Basically, is what you're saying there going forward. Wow, yeah.
Yeah. So that discussion kind of started this time last year within the government, central government. So I'm unsure of where it is in the process at this minute time, but I will assume it'll be out before the end of 2026. They'll be starting to use AI to evaluate tenders.
Very good.
Folks, I'm just a little bit conscious of time here, so before we sort of wrap up, I want to ask you both, and in one sentence, because I know both of you can talk for hours. Uh, if you could give one piece of advice to organizations in the construction sector who are preparing to address their ESG in 2026, what would it be? Shauna, as our guest today, would you like to go first?
Well, you'll see my background's very much around kind of compliance around legislation and policies come through. So it's keeping your eye open for all the legislative policy changes that are about to impact your business, and selecting your ESG to align with these, and getting your processes, policies, and assurance set up so there'll be an easier transition for you.
Yeah,
Thank you very
see,
much.
out of two, I think just following on from Shauna, coming from a data perspective, build strong foundations, get the building blocks firmly in place around the procedure, the policies, just making sure you've got the basics in place, and then everything else that will stem from that should be strong, should be robust, and then that means you're going to get that good, accurate data flow coming through, and so on as well. That's important.
Folks,
I think number two, if you are, for example, sitting today a main contractor, and you do have a sizable supply chain and you haven't yet started to engage with them on this, I would encourage you during 26 start the engagement with the supply chain around ESG. Again, I would automatically maybe look more towards the carbon emissions at the minute because it's a focus. But if you haven't already, start the engagement. If you have already, I just think we need to up it now to the next stage in terms of the actual quality, accuracy, reliability, consistency of the data that's coming through from the supply chain as well. So it'd be my two areas of focus for sure.
thank you very much. Liam, Shauna, thank you so much for your time. I will just do a wee wrap up and sort of point people in the direction if they want to find out more information about what we do at Sustain IQ and what Shauna does over at Responsible Solutions. For those of you who are not familiar, Sustain IQ is an ESG reporting platform that brings all that data together and helps facilitate a lot of those key points that have been discussed today, especially things like your reporting and your compliance and that audit trail, and also collecting that data from your scope 3 emissions. We'll not do all too heavy on that. And Shauna, would you like to give a little bit of a wrap up around what it is that you do and how people can find you?
Thank you. Yes, well, I suppose kind of you can find me on my website, responsiblesolutions.co.uk. And again, I work with construction companies and across the other sectors as well around trying to get their policies, procedures, assurances in place to ensure that they are ESG compliant, in a way to add value to them as a business as well. So yeah, jump onto my website, find me on LinkedIn as well. And I think my email is also available there, Shauna at responsiblesolutions.co.uk.
Yep, excellent.
Thank you.
Folks, thank you very much. The one thing I'll wrap up and say is for anybody that's joined us today, there is an absolute wealth of resources on the CNIQ website that go into some of these topics in a bit more detail, especially around the likes of supply chain, some of the pieces of legislation that Liam had mentioned. And obviously, we have our most recent ebook, which is a broader look at some of the topics that we've touched on today. So as our industry outlook, and covers things that we didn't have the time to touch on, a bit more detail on the likes of AI and access to finance and how all these things are coming down the line in the year ahead. Folks, I'll let you do the final word. Liam, final thoughts?
Yeah, no, thank you very much, folks. Really appreciate your time this morning. Hopefully you did find that useful. Again, it was only 45 minutes. It's difficult to go too deep on multiple trends, but hopefully look, we flagged a few there that are of interest to you, and we put them hopefully on your radar. And yeah, look forward to maybe diving into some of those a wee bit deeper in future sessions.
Sean, any final thoughts from yourself?
No, just thank you very much for taking the time to come and listen to us today. And again, yeah, there's a lot to talk about, and it's a wide area. So it is. So.
Well, thank you for your time today, Shauna. And folks, a recording of this will be available as well from this afternoon on the StainIQ website. And we'll also be sending out an email to everyone with that recording as well. Other than that, have a fantastic Thursday. And yeah, we hope to see you on the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.